Everything okay?
Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee. I'm Janetta Soshin and I chair the committee. I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting is being streamed live on our website and being recorded. We're gradually getting used to these remote meetings, but sometimes technical problems occur, so please bear with us if that happens during the meeting. A few reminders about the running of the meeting. When they are not actively participating in the meeting, I would ask members and officers to keep their audio and video turned off. Any member wishing to speak should type an H in the chat box and I will call them when it is their turn to speak. All questions and contributions must come through the chair. And please remember to turn on your video and audio when I call you to speak. Any councillor with an interest in any item should declare it and keep their audio and video off when it is being considered. They will not be included in any vote on the subject. When it comes to a decision on any of the recommendations or motions before us, I will ask Mr. Mayfield, Legal and Democratic Services Manager, to conduct a formal vote on each. If we lose the live stream on the website, I will adjourn the meeting for 10 minutes and hopefully the problem can be fixed. If it cannot, I will adjourn the meeting until a future date. Thank you. Moving on, I go straight to item 2, attendance and apologies for absence. Brian?
Yes, Chair, just to confirm the members of the committee present, they're councillors Lee Ashley, Helen Ayres, Anne Davidson, Sue Dobson, Patricia Hughes, Richard Hyland, Richard Lee, Graham Pooley, Richard Porter, Chris Shaw, Bob Shepherd, yourself, Janetta Sosing, and Ian Wright. I've only had one apology for absence, that's from Councillor Sampson. A couple of other members present are Councillors Paul Clark and Lance Mullane, and the officers present from Planning are Keith Holmes, Kirsty Dougal, Sarah Hill-Tarders and Paul Harwood. From Public Protection, Lewis Mould, and from Legal Services, William Butcher, and I'm here from Democratic Services, Brian Mayfield. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 3, declarations of interest. All members are reminded that they must disclose any interest they know they have in items of business on the meeting's agenda, and they must do so at this point on the agenda or as soon as they become aware of the interest. If the interest is a disclosable pecuniary interest, they are also obliged to notify the monitoring officer within 28 days of the meeting. The next item is the minutes of the meeting on the 6th of June 2020.
Chairman.
Yes, someone spoke. I don't know why.
Chairman, I may raise my hand.
Oh, sorry, I hadn't quite finished. That's why I hadn't got round to you. Thank you. Yes, declarations of interest. Sorry. Yes, Councillor Hyland, apologies.
Chair, I wish to declare a personal whilst non-prejudicial interest and non-predetermined position when the matter of 90 Brook Lane, Gallywood, is considered, and remove myself from place in the committee.
I'm grateful. Thank you very much. Councillor Lee?
And I will be withdrawing from any vote or discussion on item 9 on the agenda, 69 Torquay Road.
Right, thank you very much, both.
Yes.
Sorry, I moved on slightly too quickly.
Sorry, and Chair, Graham Pooley, I shall be not taking part in the debate about Hanbury Road, as I was not part of the debate last time.
Right, thank you very much, all of you. Is there anyone else? No? I shall move on to the minutes then.
Sorry, Chairman, can I just add to that?
Ah, yes.
Yeah, I will not
Of course,
be.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. I was not at the site visit yesterday, so I will listen but will not vote or debate on that item when it arrives.
Thank you very much. I will finally move on to the minutes then. The minutes of the meeting on the 6th of June. Are you happy, everyone, for me to confirm that the minutes are correct record of the meeting?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Moving on to public question time. Any member of the public may ask a question or make a statement at this point. It's usual that these items are kept until the item you wish to speak to is called. But in the meantime, I'll say that each person has 2 minutes and a maximum of 15 minutes is allotted to this particular area of public question time. The chair may disallow a question if it's offensive, substantially the same as another question, or requires disclosure of exempt or confidential information. If the question cannot be answered at the meeting, a written response will be given after the meeting. A little more, then you'll be ready. When an application is returning to the committee that has been deferred for a site visit, for further information, or to consider detailed reasons for refusal, those who spoke under public questions at the previous meeting may not repeat their questions or statements. Any member of the public who wishes to submit a question will have already done so and will have emailed it in time for the start of the meeting to consider the information. All valid questions and statements will be published and have been done so and will be responded to at the meeting. Those who have submitted a valid question or statement will be entitled to put it in person at the meeting, provided they've indicated that they wish to do so. I'll now move on to item 6, which is, in fact, I will be dealing with 6, 7 and 8, which are all applications for Hanbury Road, Chelmsford, covering from 10 to 14. That is because we adjourned the meeting last time so that we could arrange a site visit, which was undertaken yesterday. So we're not here to present the reports from last time, but to consider questions by the committee members to officers following the site visit, and to consider any further information from residents and officers' replies, including on the green sheets. I believe Paul Harwood may want to start the ball rolling. Sarah.
Good evening, Chair. Sorry, I'm speaking this evening. Paul is available for questions, but I'm just going to briefly introduce the item, if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Committee members will be aware that there are 3 applications, and these were previously considered at the last committee meeting and deferred to allow for the site visit. Members carried out the site visit yesterday morning, and they also visited neighbours at number 46 and 64 Longacre. Residents have raised points around and have provided additional information on the following matters: errors within the applicant's noise report, the height of the extension at the back of the site, the material used for the roof of the building and the extension, and their own noise report. Copies of neighbours' letters and the neighbours' updated noise report have been emailed to all members, and the council have included comments on these points within the green sheet for you. Just by way of a very brief recap of the existing site, although it is vacant and somewhat neglected now, it does have a lawful use to operate 24/7 for general industrial purposes, number 14 at the front, and for storage purposes for numbers 10 and 12 at the back of the site. The development before us includes a number of elements: demolition of part of number 14 at the front to create a larger outdoor storage area, change of use of the whole site to a builder's merchants, and also works to the rear building, some of which are retrospective, such as the new roof that we saw on site yesterday. And the works include a new rear extension and also a side extension to the west side of Unit 10. Members having been to the site and having visited the gardens of numbers 64 and 46, you will have seen for yourselves the existing relationship between houses and industrial estate. You will have also noted the difference in ground levels between the two. And just to aid you in your consideration, the proposed rear extension would be 5 metres deep from the back of the rear unit and would leave a gap of 1.5 metres to the garden boundaries. From the existing ground floor level within the site, the top of the fence at the end of number 64, and we all obviously visited number 64, this sits at approximately 3.1 metres measured from within the application site. The underside of the eaves of the proposed rear extension from ground level within the site would be approximately 4.3 metres. So when viewed from the garden of the neighbour at number 64, the extension eaves sit approximately 1.2 metres higher than their fence. The new materials on the roof of the rear building were clear to see. These are also proposed on the rear extension too. Members will note that condition 4 of item 7 requires details of the roof material to the extension to be submitted and approved for officers prior to its use. Members are asked to note the applicant's noise report, and this has been updated in its description of the wall of the rear extension following discussion and query at the previous committee. The description of the wall has been updated to reflect the submitted plans, and the sound reduction calculations of the building have been remodelled, taking account of this. The report indicates that any noise produced would be below British standard, and the council are satisfied that there would be no harmful impact on neighbour amenity. Again, my colleague, Lewis Mould, from Public Health and Protection, is here this evening to answer any questions that the committee might have, specifically concerning the noise and the noise reports. And further information of that is available on the green sheet, Chairman. Thank you for now.
Thank you. Right, members, it's your turn to ask questions at this point. So who will be first on this? I have nobody showing that they want to speak at the moment. Do you want?
Madam Chairman, I did signify I'd like to speak, but it doesn't appear to be registering.
No, it hasn't. Right, Councillor Wright.
Yeah, it's on the green sheet under roof materials. The last sentence, a further condition can be added to require the roof of number 1012 to be treated with a non-reflective finish. Can we have that condition, please, added? Thank you.
Thank you. Can we move on to Councillor Sue Dobson?
Hello, am I here? Yes. Yes, thank you. Good evening, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to say thank you to everybody who arranged the site visit yesterday. It's much appreciated and gave us, I think, a really good overview of the application before us. I have a couple of questions, one of which has already been asked by Councillor Wright, which was going to be my first point regarding the reflective roof. If a condition is added to that, that would be brilliant. I am still, and I'm sure I'm probably not the only one, I'm still a little bit confused with regard to these various noise reports. Looking at the sheet that came, I think one of the emails from the residents, there seems to be some discrepancy as regards where the receptors are. I think there's a sort of a query with regard to where the actual noise receptors, the readings were taken from. I'm not a noise expert, and I've been sort of going backwards and forwards through the report. I'd just like to know because from this sheet concerned, it appears to be going be too high. Then the noise effect will be too high, especially in the garden. And I just really perhaps would like to just sort of explain and where I can find on the report where where that would be. The other aspect I was going to mention, I mentioned last time about lighting. It was kind of brushed aside a little bit because we got onto other things, and then it was deferred anyway, so I didn't labour the point. I would like to see a condition for if the rear roof is going to have translucent panels in it. I would like to see a condition that when the building is closed for the day, that the lighting is turned off, because so that to minimise light pollution from the site. And the outside security lighting by sensors. Sorry, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. I will go back to the officers in a minute, but Councillor Chris Shaw, what is your question?
Thank you. I was concerned with the same kind of issues as Councillor Dobson, but the other thing that I wanted to mention, it's not really a question, but I am concerned about the height of the extension above the fences of the gardens in Longacre, which originally I think we were led to believe wouldn't be above the fence, but plainly is now, 1.2 metres higher, and also higher than that in some places where the level of the gardens differs. I think that is still a real problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No one else is asking, so I'll go back to the officers at this point. Who would like to start this? Paul, thank you. You need to put your mic on.
My apologies, I've just sat on the mute button there. Picking up on Councillor Wright's first point and Councillor Dobson with the reflective roof, yeah, we're happy to put a condition on, and we've prepared that so we could put that on. The noise report in terms of the receptors and their location, I'll defer that to Lewis Mould in the first instance. The height from Councillor Shaw, perhaps if I can show a slide, I'll provide more clarity on the different heights.
If you can, yes, please.
Excuse me. Bear with me a second. Hopefully that's clear. So as Sarah mentioned,
That's it.
the depth is 5 meters across. There's a 1.5 meter gap retained, and the rear wall would stand at 4.3 meters from the back element. The fence line, as you saw yesterday, this is the rear of number 64, is 3.1 meters, and then there would be an additional area of wall at 1.2 that will protrude above the top. Some reference has been made to the slide with the grey element. That is obviously a picture, so there's no scale available on there, and it's simply an artistic impression. This shows the height of the fence from ground level. So I hope that provides more clarity on that point. With the lighting, we can put a condition on outside lighting. Well, I think I previously mentioned at the previous committee, there wouldn't be a need for lighting along the rear of the building to cover the rear extension, because as you saw yesterday, it would enclose that space. Any lighting along the front of that building would shine into the site. So it's my view and officer's view that it probably wouldn't have an impact on neighbours behind. We can explore a condition on the inside of the building. However, as in the report, the translucent panels will face upwards. So it's a view that it would face away from residents and wouldn't be towards them. In any case, the most time it's the most likely to be prevalent is in nighttime hours, as I previously said, and it would, at those times it'd be dark. So you would consider that residents may have their curtains closed at that time. I'm not sure if we'd be able to enforce a condition in terms of the tests of the planning conditions for the internal lighting. But yeah, with regards to external, we can certainly explore it, but it's not considered by officers to be an issue, especially on the front. Hopefully that answers any questions. I did say I'd defer to Lewis for the point about the receptors.
Yes.
So I'll just invite him to comment on that.
Please.
Yes, Chair. With regard to the comments about the location as to where the measurements are taken, I think this was mentioned at the last committee as well, is that quite often with these sort of issues, there is some interpretation by acoustic consultants as to where, for example, where the source of the noise is measured from, and also where the receptor is. So the two acoustic reports, one for the applicant and one for the residents, have obviously taken different views on where they consider that should be measured from, and by that rationale they've come up with slightly different amounts. Now I think one of the councillors also mentioned the introduction, I think, of the information that was provided yesterday by the residents acoustic consultant. It's quite surprising that would come to light at such a late stage, and they've introduced a new view of what they consider the predicted noise levels would be at such a late stage, when they haven't raised this at any other point during the life of the application, as I think has been mentioned on the green sheet. So I just really wanted to make that point that my role is obviously to be independent and to look at the content of both of the reports. And my view is, having looked at it and, to the best of my knowledge, and it does look like that, as I've said before, and as it says on the green sheet, my view is that this use could take place without causing significant noise issues to those residents that live close by. But I can't remember if I said this last time or not, but one of the, while I've got no reason to suspect that noise issues will be caused, if the reality turns out to be far from what is predicted in the applicant's report, which is what the residents' report is suggesting, and there are significant noise issues caused to residents, then obviously my service has the power to deal with those sort of matters, irrespective of if planning permission is given, and we obviously could if noise was turned out to be causing a nuisance, then that's something that we can deal with by, under the law that we use.
Right, thank you.
Thanks.
Right, is anyone else wishing to speak on this application? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Question for the officers. With regards to operating hours, what are the current restrictions on the premises as they are versus the new restrictions? i.e., is there going to be more or less time for noise making? If that makes sense.
Right, thank you. Helen, do you want to deal with that at the moment? Do you want to have questions? So I'll have 2 or 3 and then go back to the officers.
Thank you, Councillor Soshin. Yeah, I've got a question which is related to health and safety. So my concern looking at the development was that the fact that there's only 1.5 metres between the boundary and the edge of the building, and whether that's an acceptable space in terms of whether there was an emergency and emergency services need to access the back of the building. Is that sufficient? And then secondly, on that point, I think it was in the garden number 64, the distance from the house to the edge of the building where the extension is. Again, on a similar line, if there wasn't to be an issue with the building of the extension, is that far enough away from the housing, and whether that's been taken into consideration from a health and safety perspective? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dobson.
Hi, yes, just wanted to come back on, firstly, the point made about the lighting and the interior lighting. I actually live not far from a similar type of not warehouse, but a building which has similar translucent panels. And if the lights are left on, they really light up the night sky. And I just think that there is a, there is a requirement within both the NPPF and our own policies to, minimise light pollution as much as possible. So I just wanted to make that point. The second thing is, I think again from the noise perspective, I think what I'm saying is really I'm very concerned for the residents, in as much that they want to be able to sit in their gardens and enjoy a peaceful sort of time in their gardens without listening to crash bang wallop and perhaps Radio 2 reverberating through the metal roof. And I just really wanted some assurance, especially with all the toing and froing of all the reports and the emails, etc., that this is the case and the residents are not going to be adversely impacted by this.
Thank you. Right, can I go back to Paul Harwood, please?
Thank you, Chair. Going through in turn, Councillor Lee raised questions about hours of use. As Sarah mentioned at the start, the front number 14 has a B2 lawful use, which was achieved over a 10-year period. So there is no restriction on using that property and area in terms of hours of use for those purposes. And the B8 use had an Essex permission at the rear, which had hours of use from 7 till 6:30, I believe. And there was some various extensions through a number of applications to allow them to use that building through Saturdays and Sundays for limited periods of the year. So we've got a condition, as you'll have seen on the application for the hours of use. That condition is considered to be it's 7 till 5, I believe, to be an improvement on certainly the B2 use at the front, which, as I said, is lawful, so there's no restriction. And secondly, on the B8 use to the rear, it would bring the hours shorter than lawful. Secondly, Councillor Ayres' point on health and safety, although it's not planning policy and governed by it's not a planning policy and governed by the Planned Act, building regulations would pick up that particular aspect, and that would be a requirement for them to consider. We don't have any scope to consider the health and safety matters in terms of the sufficient gap for fire and for any sort of maintenance issues, and similarly that goes to the gap to the rear properties in number 64. That would be something that building regulations would consider and would look through their acts in the life of construction, or should the permission be granted. Going back to Councillor Dobson, I appreciate her comments again about internal lighting. I was going to add at the end of my first section that there is a condition on the use permission, condition 9, which concerns external lighting, and details of that to be put to us. Any application that we'd have for that, we would be looking for a specific information about when the lights would be on and how they would face down, and the level of lumens and luminosity that they produce. We're also happy to I appreciate concerns about the internal lighting aspect of the roofs coming up from the roof. We're happy to explore a condition, putting a similar condition on. Obviously the hours of use condition would cover the use of the building itself. Sure, we can put a condition that would tie on the lighting to that condition to avoid them being left on through the night. Hopefully that answers any questions.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this item? It obviously has been a really contentious one for some time. Councillor Wright, did you want to come back? I thought I saw your H appear and then disappear again. It's not coming back to me. Okay. All right. Well, as far as I can see, I can at this point go to the recommendation covering 10 to 14 Hanbury Road and the 3 applications, so that we can get a vote on this. Now, approval is recommended, and there are several pages of conditions on here to which we've now added. So we'll see. Item 6, approval is recommended for conditions on page 10, 11 and 12 of the report. Item 7, recommended for conditions on page 2, 3 and 4 of the report. Item 8, the conditions are on page 2, 3, and there are extra conditions on the green sheet. And now we're talking about adding a lighting condition. Councillor Roper, you have picked an odd time to come in, but do you wish to come in? No, somebody's leaning on the keyboard, I think. Now that is the recommendation. I will now ask Brian to take a formal vote on our position. Thank you, Brian.
Chair, I would advise that it be formally moved and seconded that the recommendations in the report as amended by the green sheet be approved. So if you could ask for somebody to do that.
Yes.
I second that, Madam Chairman, as you have stated.
Thank you.
In that case, Chair, the recommendation is to approve the applications at items 6, 7 and 8 with the conditions set out in the report to the meeting and as amended by the conditions in the green sheet. I'll read out each councillor's name in alphabetical order, and if they could indicate whether they're for or against the application or wish to abstain. So starting with Councillor Ashley. I'll move on to Councillor Ayres in that case.
Councillor Ayres, are you there?
Yes, I am for.
Councillor Anne Davidson.
Against, sorry.
Councillor Dobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes isn't participating in the vote as she didn't attend the site meeting. So Councillor Hyland.
Against.
Councillor Lee.
For.
Councillor Pooley isn't participating. Councillor Poulter.
For.
Councillor Roper. Moving on to Councillor Shaw.
Against.
Councillor Shepherd.
For.
Yourself, Chair. Councillor Sozin.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
Going back to Councillor Ashley. Are you there, Councillor Ashley?
Yeah. For.
Thank you. And yes, we got that. Thank you. And then going back to Councillor Roper. No, we appear to have lost Councillor Roper, Chair. I'll just tot up the votes. There's one. So the result of the vote, Chair, is that 8 councillors are in favour of approving the applications and 3 are against, with 1 vote missing, which doesn't affect the overall decision. So the applications are approved on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
That
We'll now move on.
that one. That's nice to have split though. It means we've got different views. I'm okay with that. They're not all sheep. No, you don't want to be a sheep.
Right, I don't know what's happening now, but I'm moving on. Is that okay? Thank you. Can we move on now to item 9, land south of 69 Torquay Road, Chelmsford. Now this was deferred so that we could come back with possible reasons for refusal. We were minded to refuse last time. So now we're looking at the refusal information that has been put by the original Councillor Lee and seconded, and also any information that the officers have put forward as reasons for refusal. So now we have to look at those reasons and see if they are justification. Thank you. Can I have the officer to speak, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, just draw the committee's attention to the green sheet, and additional content is included on your agenda item from both the ward council and the planning agent. Unusually, we've done that this time. We did have some admin difficulties, however, and that has meant that those documents have been treated slightly differently, in that the ward councillor's information is treated as an appendix and headed up as such, and the agent's information is simply tacked on the end of the officer report. That was not our intention. Both of those application or those information should have been headed up and attached as appendices. So please accept our apologies for this. You'll also see from your green sheet that officers have commented on the agent's submission, and we've corrected what we think are inaccurate facts. Just one minor bit of information, or lack of information really. We were hoping that we would have had the appeal decision for the single large dwelling on the site. That seems to be taking its time at PINS, and we haven't yet had the appeal decision, so I can't update you on that this evening. And as you will see from the committee papers, we as officers have considered national and local planning policy to address the concerns, and we have set out a reason for refusal, which hopefully you now find acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone want to say anything about the reasons for refusal, members? I'm not sure anybody is saying anything, so I may be able to. Oh,
Yeah, sorry.
Pooley.
Thank you, Chair. Just only to welcome that summary from Sarah Hill Sanders, to welcome the reasons for refusal, and to reaffirm my sense that that's the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? So we now have a recommendation against the officer's recommendation, and this is an application to refuse. So we again need a formal vote. We also need someone to second.
Happy to second, Chair. Graham Pooley.
I'm sorry, did we actually have a proposer?
I thought you said you needed a seconder.
I'm happy to do it, but if you...
yeah, I proposed that it should be refused last time around, if my memory serves me right. So I'm happy to do one or the other, whichever you like.
Okay, in that case, I will propose that we recommend refusal of land south of 69 Torquay Road for the information, the reasons for refusal that have been given. Can I have a formal vote, please?
Yes, Chair, I'll conduct it on the same basis as before, beginning with Councillor Ashley. Are you for or against, or wish to abstain?
Against. Against.
Okay.
Councillor Ayres?
I'll abstain on that one, please.
Councillor Davidson?
For.
Councillor Dobson?
Apologies, am I? This is to confirm that we accept that the reasons for refusal.
That's correct, yes.
To refuse, it's for. I'm for to refuse the application. Sorry.
Yep. Thank you. Councillor Hughes?
For.
Councillor Hyland?
For application to be refused.
Councillor Lee isn't participating in the vote, so Councillor Pooley?
For.
Councillor Porter?
For.
Councillor Roper?
I think we've lost him.
Yeah, it sounds like it, yes. Councillor Shaw?
For.
Councillor Shepherd?
For.
Yourself, Councillor Sozin?
For.
And Councillor Wright?
Against.
Thank you. Just top that up.
Councillor Roper may be back in, I'm not sure.
Sorry, Chair, I think I didn't vote. I think someone voted in my slot by mistake, but I'm for.
And that's going to confuse things.
Okay.
Councillor Roper, can you put your microphone on, please? Microphone? Your microphone's turned off. I cannot get Councillor Roper to...
No, we appear to have lost his sound, Chair. On the basis of the vote and those members who have indicated their preferences so far, the number in favour of refusing the application for the reasons set out in the report is 10, with 2 voting against. So the decision is to refuse the application.
Right, thank you.
Chair,
Okay,
Chair, if I could just suggest to Councillor Roper, the normal necessity is for him to log out and log back in again, and that sometimes solves his sound problem.
Yes, I think he's been trying that. Oh, right. Okay, thank you. I'll have to forgive the noise for a few minutes on my side because I cannot go and answer the phone and there's no one else here.
Hello.
Ah, someone else here. Thank you. Right, in that case, we'll move on to 90 Brook Lane, Gallywood. Again, this was back for following the site visit. Kirsty, would you like to speak at this point?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you've just mentioned, this application was considered by the Planning Committee previously on the 9th of June, and the application was deferred for a site visit. And that was to allow members to see the relationship between the application property and the proposed extension, and the relationship with the neighbouring property, which is number 88 Brook Lane. Members, that you'll all be aware, that site visit took place yesterday. Just want to draw your attention to the green sheet. There's one point of clarification on there in relation to windows at the neighbouring property. You'll have seen this yesterday on the site visit, so it shouldn't make too much difference to you, but it is just one point of clarification. The first floor bathroom window is in the neighbour's property is set further back than the kitchen window, and you will have seen where each of those windows were yesterday. You'll be aware from our report previously that the bathroom window is not a habitable room, so we don't afford that the same level of protection as a ground floor kitchen window, which is a habitable room. That's all from me at the moment. Happy to take questions should there be any. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions on this application? Having seen the site itself, can we have some comments, please? Anyone wish to comment? Councillor Dobson? All right.
Hello again.
Yeah.
Just really a comment again. Thank you to everybody who organised the site visit. Again, it will be as far as we could see the actual application site. It was a beautiful sunny day, so in some ways it was a very useful type of weather to actually see it, because obviously you're seeing the light impact at what it's likely to be at its best. I'm still very concerned that, bearing in mind the extension will block out completely any sunlight from the south, which obviously would have been, in winter time. The only light will be from the north, and in winter time that is liable to be drastically reduced from that which we saw yesterday. I looked in, as I say, as we walked past, we did look in the kitchen windows and could see that it was, even in the brilliant sunshine day, it was a beautiful. It was very, very dark in that particular room. And overall, I'm still not satisfied personally that setting the extension back will, I believe it will drastically affect the neighbour's light on that. So in that respect, I'm still not happy with the application.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Poulter.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm broadly in support of what Councillor Dobson says. The first floor extension to the south side will block out the light for large parts of the day, or block out the sun for large parts of the day, and will have a disproportionate effect on light to the kitchen window. Even with setting back, the extension will have a negative effect on the street scene, as mentioned by the inspector on the previous application. But I accept that this is not a clear-cut application. It could be argued convincingly either way. In these circumstances, I give greater weight to the views of the Parish Council, who know their own patch best. The Parish Council supports the refusal, and I'll go along with that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Poulter. Councillor Chris Shaw.
Thank you. I would be broadly in agreement with everything that Councillor Dobson said and that Councillor Poulter said. I'm very much of the opinion that that would cause an unacceptable reduction of light to the kitchen of the neighbours. And I know the original report from the officers said that there was extra light that would come in from the windows at the back. But when you look into the house, it's a considerable distance back, and I don't believe from what we saw that that would make a useful difference to the amount of light in the kitchen. And so therefore I still have severe doubts of the effect of the extension on the light, not so much about the street scene, but the light into the neighbour's property.
Right, thank you. Who's coming up now? Councillor Roper. Have you managed to get in this time? Councillor Roper. He comes and goes. Right, is there anyone else? Because I cannot get to Councillor Roper, whatever I do. Oh, there he is. Councillor Roper, can you try putting on your microphone? We cannot hear you. I'm sorry, Councillor Roper, we cannot take your information unless you can type it in the chat box when I could pick it up. But that's all I can do. We're not getting no sound from you at all. So I'll give you a moment to do that. Can you do that? I would prefer to hear Councillor Roper. Is there anyone else in the meantime while I'm looking for this?
My hand is up, Chair.
The trouble is you're doing different things. You're putting your golden hand up, which is difficult.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do apologise. That's my mistake. I'm very sorry.
That's what's happening. So, Councillor Pooley, will you say, and then if something comes up from Councillor Roper, we will see it.
Yeah, like Councillor Shaw, I don't have a problem with the street scene, but I think the same problems that several of us had in terms of the impact on the light next door remains for me. One of the considerations at the last committee meeting, if you remember, was not just the proximity of the extension wall, but also the slight overhang of the guttering as well.
Yes.
And although there is a very, very slight gap, if one looks directly upwards, between where the guttering would end and where the wall of the next door house would begin, it is very, very small. And I think that the fact that we were there on such a bright day, and yet it was clearly dark and clearly it was clear to see what the effect was going to be, that I'm afraid I find this as a matter of judgment, given that it is a matter of judgment rather than clear-cut planning policy one way or the other, as a matter of judgment, I would be in favour of refusing.
Thank you. Councillor Roper doesn't seem to be getting anywhere, I'm afraid. Now, I have a problem this time because having been to the site visits, I am not happy to endorse the officer's position either. So I think we're looking at a refusal here, which would mean we need proposer and seconder for a refusal.
Happy to do that, Chair. Councillor Pooley.
I'm happy to second.
Thank you. Right, again, we'll need a formal vote.
Chair, as I understand it, because the officers recommended in their original report that the application be approved, you're going against that recommendation on the basis that you're not happy with the effect of the development resulting in loss of light to the neighbour's property, in which case you'll be minded to refuse to bring that back to the next meeting with the detailed wording of the reason for to be agreed. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. Then I'll take the vote on.
Yeah, sorry, can I just come in here?
Yes.
Sorry, I did put my little H in. Before you take the vote, I think it's important, Chair, that members are aware what reasons for refusal are being voted on, and we don't have that. And I think that we could, because we've had this back last time, I think we could suggest a reason for refusal to you that maybe members could vote on to avoid the need for it to come back.
That would be great.
Next time. If I can hand
I'm
over
happy for you to suggest.
I won't do it personally, Chair, but I'm sure one of my colleagues can suggest.
Kirsty?
I think I'm that colleague. Bear with me, Chair, one moment. I will share my screen and then hopefully you should be able to read a suggested reason for refusal, which would be in relation to loss of light to the kitchen window of number 88. Bear with me. Hopefully you should be able to see the reason for refusal there. Some
Yes.
verbal confirmation would be good. Thank you.
Can you just read it out for those who are maybe just on the phone?
So the reason for refusal draft, we would suggest Policy DM29 of the Chelmsford Local Plan relates to protecting living and working environments and states that planning permission will be granted providing the development, amongst other matters, safeguards the living environment of the occupiers of any nearby residential property by ensuring that the development is not overbearing and does not result in an unacceptable overlooking or overshadowing. The proposed extension would increase the amount of built form close to the boundary with number 88. The side facing kitchen window to number 88 would suffer from a loss of light as a result of the first floor side and rear extension. This would be harmful to the amenity of the neighbouring occupiers and would be contrary to policy DM29.
Thank you. That's excellent. Did anyone want to add to that reason? Nobody's coming up. Okay, that is the reason we're voting on. Thank you very much. Brian.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Then I'll conduct the vote on that basis, beginning again with Councillor Ashley. Are you for or against the refusal?
For the refusal.
Councillor Ayres?
Against the refusal.
Councillor Davidson?
For the refusal.
Councillor Dobson?
For the refusal.
Can I just confirm, Councillor Hughes, that you couldn't attend the site visit and therefore won't be voting on this application?
Yeah, that's correct.
Right, thank you. Councillor Hyland, again, you said earlier that you wouldn't be voting on this application. So I'll move on to Councillor Lee.
Against.
Councillor Pooley.
For refusal.
Councillor Poulter.
For the refusal.
I don't know if we can hear Councillor Roper.
Oh dear.
No.
Lovely picture of your face, Timothy, but we cannot hear you.
So we'll have to move on to Councillor Shaw.
For the refusal.
Councillor Shepherd.
For the refusal.
Yourself, Councillor Susan.
For the refusal.
And Councillor Wright.
For. And Madam Chairman, could I suggest that Councillor Roper just write for or against on a bit of paper and he could hold it up and you could see it?
That sounds a good idea. Whether Councillor Roper can hear us, I don't know. Councillor Roper, can you try that? Oh dear. We are having problems with Councillor Roper tonight. We may be getting somewhere. Oh, against the refusal, by the look of it. Would you agree with that? Can you put it up again?
Yep, no, I saw that, Chair. So, so on that basis, there were 9 in favour of refusing the application for the reasons given earlier and 3 against, so the decision is to refuse the application.
Thank you. And thank you for Councillor Roper for getting there. Right, moving on. We'll go to item 11, the Lodge Country Inn, Hayes Chase, Battlesbridge, Whitford. Can I have the officer's report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Paul Harwood, Planning Officer.
Thank you.
The application is for 4 new buildings to provide 22 extra bedrooms at the Lodge Country Inn in Battlesbridge. The application site is to the south of the hotel. The hotel is located in relative isolation and surrounded by vacant and undeveloped farmland. The site is in the green belt. This image shows the application site. You will see that it is green and rural in nature. The land is currently used for the beer garden and contains garden paraphernalia, as you can see. This picture shows the site looking north. You will see the hotel itself and an area of hard standing around it used for parking. The proposal seeks permission for the construction of 4 single-storey buildings within the beer garden. The buildings will measure a cumulative 135 square metres in footprint. The buildings will be laid out in a triangular formation with a central lawn in between and paving and tarmac. All new buildings in the Greenbelt are in appropriate development, unless the development is one of a number of listed exceptions. A new building for tourism is not one of the listed exceptions. The development is therefore inappropriate development. The 4 buildings proposed will result in a spatial loss of openness, eroding an undeveloped and open parcel of Greenbelt. The proposal would increase the spread of built form on site by 25%. The development would also be visually prominent. The proposal is therefore harmful to the openness of the Greenbelt. The applicant has provided an economic argument for permission to be granted. It appears to the Council the expansion of the facility would have a modest contribution to local economy. However, this is not considered to amount to very special circumstances, and they would not outweigh the harm identified to the Greenbelt. The development is therefore inappropriate and harmful, and substantial weight is attached to this harm. In order to meet local parking standards, the application must provide an additional 22 parking spaces. The application lacks sufficient evidence to demonstrate that these additional spaces would be provided. The application is therefore in conflict with this policy. National policy sets out that achieving sustainable development means reaching 3 overarching objectives: a social objective, an economic objective, and an environmental objective. The site is not in a sustainable location. Hayes Chase is a private road which is narrow, absent of street lighting, and has no public footway. The closest bus stop is in excess of 500 metres to the north, and there's very little access to public transport. The impact on the Greenbelt further represents environmental harm. The proposal would hold an economic benefit, but this does not outweigh the negative social and environmental impacts of the scheme. The application therefore fails to represent sustainable development. To conclude, the proposal is inappropriate development in the Greenbelt that would spatially and visually harm its openness. Substantial weight is attached to this harm. There are no very special circumstances that exist to outweigh this harm. Development doesn't also comply with parking standards. And finally, the application fails to achieve sustainable development. Officers therefore recommend the refusal of plan permission.
Right, thank you. Now then, I don't know of any other residents who might be wishing to speak, but we do have John Dagg on behalf of the applicant, and that's to be read out by Democratic Services Officer Brian Mayfield.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just the one representation in connection with this application from the public to be submitted to this meeting, and it's, as you say, from John Dagg. He says, I have given some advice in connection with this proposal, and I would like to briefly draw members' attention to 2 matters raised in the committee report. It is very helpful that officers have attached Mr. Mendel's statement and description to the report. I would draw particular attention to the economic case made for this additional accommodation, benefit to both the business and the local economy in general in this southern part of the city area. There is support from the County Council's Tourism Partnerships Manager, Cheryl Owen, confirming the benefit to leisure and tourism. That's on page 9 of the statement. She describes the hotel as a, quote, hidden treasure. Having more accommodation in the area would obviously benefit leisure and tourism, end quote. Members will also be interested to know that the City Council's Economic Development Officer, Helen Quinnell, has recently supported the proposal. It is a common sense point that a country inn will be in the countryside. There are a number of country hotels in the Chelmsford area. I mentioned 3 examples in the Greenbelt: Greenwoods at Stock, recently permitted to expand, Pontlands Park, Great Baddow, and Furs Hill, Margaretting. Such hotels are important in the local economy. Expansion of such facilities should be open to consideration, providing that no significant Greenbelt harm arises. On the Greenbelt impact, it is of course the case that new buildings is proposed here within the Greenbelt. Because there are not buildings on this part of the hotel site at present, there will be a literal loss of openness in geometrical terms. It is accepted that very special circumstances have to be shown by the applicant to justify the proposal, as required under NPPF paragraphs 143 and 144 and the corresponding parts of the City Council's local plan. The case is made in the supporting statement that this proposal for single-storey overnight accommodation will have a negligible effect on the appearance of the Green Belt in this locality. I would ask members to give this substantial weight. Mr. Mendel has included photographs to illustrate his point. I have inspected the hotel, the application site and surroundings and have noted the following. The application site is already very much a part of the hotel's operational area. The latter is not extended. The proposal is for single-storey chalets with low-pitched roofs. These will not be seen approaching from the main southern entrance along Hayes Chase or from the north, nor will they be seen from the public footpath to the west. This is because of the topography and the enclosures of the application site by the hotel building and existing mature high hedging. Members may be aware of the position in any event. On the question of very special circumstances, this provision is included in Greenbelt policy to avoid undue rigidity. The Greenbelt is not an absolute bar to development if a proper case can be made out. Very special circumstances can be found when the potential harm to the Greenbelt by reason of inappropriateness and other harm resulting from the proposal is clearly outweighed by other considerations. In this case, the substantive harm to the Greenbelt is very slight, as argued earlier. Economic considerations have always been capable of being very special circumstances. A very prominent example is the Ford complex at Dunton in Basildon, south of the A127. The courts have been clear that whether very special circumstances are made out is a matter for the judgment of the decision maker, in this case the committee. The circumstances do not have to be rare or unusual. Lord Justice Carnworth stated in Wychavon DC versus Secretary of State for Communities and Local Government that rarity is not essential to meet the very special circumstances test. The word special connotes not a quantitative test but a qualitative judgment as to the weight to be given to the particular factor for planning purposes. I would ask the committee to consider carefully whether the economic case here for the business and the locality, combined with a lack of substantive harm to the Greenbelt, cannot amount to very special circumstances. That's the end of the statement, Chair.
Thank you. That was quite a long statement, but we do have it written as well. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this application? I have no one at the moment. Oh,
You have me, Chair.
yes.
As full councillor, I called it in. Is
Yes.
it okay if I speak? Yeah?
Yes, please, carry on.
Okay. If you thought that was long, wait till you hear this. Thank you. Members, thanks for the opportunity to address the committee. As ward councillor, I've met the applicant and accompanied him to the pre-application advice meeting at the council offices. The Lodge Country Inn is a well-known establishment and has been serving the community for many years. One of the factors affecting their business has been its inability to expand in light of the changes to the way wedding ceremonies are conducted. They have a large marquee, a veranda for ceremonies and gardens, all of which serve the purpose well, but they have seen a significant number of bookings lost through not having extra accommodation to support the demand. The site is in the green belt, but there are occasions when the very special circumstances within the guidance of NPPF can be mitigated to outweigh the restrictions, and I believe this is one of them. If it were not for these very special circumstances, establishments within the green belt would not have any opportunity to expand at all. And as you've just heard from Mr. Dagg's statement, which I didn't know about until this morning, the Greenwoods estate in Stock that had a very large orangery, permission for a very large orangery, replacing a temporary marquee a few years ago, which some of the longer serving members on this committee may remember. Pontlands Park Hotel and Conference Centre in Great Baddow has benefited from an extensive list of extensions to their buildings as their business expanded. It has never been refused permission in over 30 years, as the records show. Both are in the green belt and as well as being in a heritage site. Members no doubt had a chance to scrutinise the agenda items, so I don't intend to go through it all, but I do intend to just summarise some of the comments at the end of the report. On the recommendations, starting on page 148 of the agenda pack, reason 1, the report does mention NPPF and the special circumstances, but it does not expand on the reasons that would outweigh the inappropriateness of development within the green belt, which may have been more helpful to the members. It only mentions briefly the council has reviewed the economic case, but does not explain the methodology for doing this. This is a significant point, in my opinion, and worth more of an explanation than a brief comment. Surely the report has to be balanced and allow members to make their decision based on all the factors affecting this application. With the current circumstances facing the hospitality sector, the likely damage to the local economy and the local economy, there is every reason to suggest that future accommodation is likely to be less than shown in the applicant's accompanying documents, as these documents were prepared prior to March 2020. Therefore, it is a very special circumstance that can mitigate in favour of granted permission and likely to be greater than previously stated. Demand can be expected when the local economy picks up, but the question will be how much of the previous supply will still be there. On today's forecast, you will have noticed the UK economy is forecast to take much longer to recover than previously thought. In order for local businesses such as the Lodge Country Inn to recover from this, they need a proverbial shot in the arm, not another kick in the teeth. There was a proven shortage before the lockdown. I suggest this will not be any better as restrictions are lifted. Mr. Mendel, the applicant, has reason to believe without the ability to expand his business at this venue, this establishment could easily become a casualty as well. Members, we risk losing more than gaining much needed accommodation in this area, as well as a key establishment providing hospitality. So turning to reason 2, the substantial off-street parking exists by use of an overflow car park that can accommodate many vehicles to the north of the site, and this is clearly shown on the map. Therefore, the M27, I suggest, is not a reason for refusal. Essex County Council Highways could not have examined this site or the map before making their comments as consultees. Regarding the comments on public transport, there is a limited bus service, but also there are railway stations at Battlesbridge, Wickford and Southwood and Ferrers nearby. Also, there are several local taxi companies serving the nearby towns of Wickford and Southwood and Ferrers. These do not appear to have been affected by the proposed development of 1,000 houses in the new local plan, which is less than 2 miles away in Southwood and Ferrers and adjacent to the same A132 main road that the lodge uses as one of its 2 entrances. I cannot see how this is a reason for refusal. Anyone wishing to see the site in question would have to enter the grounds of the establishment. It is not visible from the road at either entrance due to the high hedging that surrounds the southern part of the site. Some of the clients to the Lodge Country Inn are from Hayes Country Park, which is directly opposite the A132 entrance, and also in the Green Belt. Only 5 years ago, it was granted a full 12-month residency by this committee for over 500 residents, and it has seen a huge change from being simply caravans to the much larger park home type accommodation. And the current site licence allows for an increase to 390 homes. So the local economy in both Wickford and South Woodham does not benefit from a reliable bus service. So many workers and residents use a private car or taxi service to travel to and from their destinations. This is not an issue or a concern in the new local plan affecting this area. I ask why it is pertinent now to this application. Anyone living in a rural or semi-rural community, for instance, will testify that public transport is prone to cuts rather than improvements, regardless of the increase in housing and infrastructure. In these circumstances, private transport is often the only form available. There are no further cycle paths planned in the south of the city boundary to my knowledge. The applicant has already stated in the pre-planning meeting that as part of their proposed expansion, they would provide some courtesy transport for its clients to travel hubs and venues such as local golf courses. I think it would serve to reduce, not increase, the amount of vehicle use during the periods of occupancy by the clients, should this application be successful. So on reason 3, and reference to the NPPF, there are, within paragraphs 8 and 11, 3 presumptions of sustainable development, which are economic, social and environmental, as we've already seen. Indeed, 11A states plans should positively seek opportunities to meet the development needs of their area and be sufficiently flexible to adapt to rapid change. This would be in relation to both housing and business needs and applies in this case to the demands of additional accommodation and expanded hospitality locally. I do not believe anyone will doubt the rapid changes that are affecting us all at the moment. I'm nearly finished, Chair. Regarding the positive and proactive statement on 149, I attended the pre-planning advice meeting with the applicant at the council offices and do not recall any of the comments in this, not all of the comments in this report given to the applicant. However, the officer did compliment Mr. Mendel on the extensive work to prove the opportunities lost by not having the accommodation to meet their current business demands. The geographical evidence of the Green Belt is not in question, but the very special circumstances that outweigh in favour of the application are. There is a copy of the correspondence which you've seen from the Tourism Office, so I won't go into that. The city's own council economic development officer said that further to our previous discussion, I can confirm that from an economic development point of view, I would still consider the development necessary to support the growth and sustainability of the business. I haven't as yet seen anything come through from my planning colleagues, which I expect is due to Green Belt. However, whilst I am sympathetic to national and local policy, from a business angle, my stance is still the same. So, members, you'll recall a cornerstone of the recently adopted local plan is development of local economy. And this is through job creation and supporting businesses in all areas, not just the urban districts. It is one of the reasons I urge members to consider the very special circumstances that do exist in this application and consider a site visit to gain a better perspective of how the proposed development is worthy of your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. But in future, if you let me know that you're going to speak as ward councillor, I would have come straight to you. So you need to.
Okay, my apologies. I did think the report said it was called in by the ward councillor, and I was here to speak on that.
Right. Thank
you.
If you can do that. And also, I understand that you are not on the committee tonight, so you're
I'm not.
Quite welcome. Thank you very much. And that I will now go on to other people to speak. I believe Councillor Pooley.
Chairman, if I may, I'd prefer to wait and listen to some other comments. I came in because there seemed to be nobody else coming in at the time, so I'd prefer to come in a bit later if you don't mind. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hughes, you've put your hand up.
I did indeed. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
My ward is approximately 3 to 4 miles from this lodge. And in the lodge is a beautiful set in the countryside. It is a well-used pub because they have a lovely facility for the children and also for the views. Now, if this development was to take place, the children's facility would be taken away and instead would be the new accommodation. I do not agree with Councillor Clark that it would improve the economy. There's various other hotels in the vicinity, one being approximately 2 miles away. And the town council feel that nothing has changed from this application that was put in last year. The parking in the grounds at the moment is horrendous, and they are having to park down Hayes Chase, which, as I'm sure some of us know from a previous application in Hayes Chase, that it is not exactly fit for parking. It's very narrow, and traffic is going out onto the 132, which goes out onto the main road, and there have been several accidents because technically that is the way in. I fully support the officer's recommendation that this application be refused. There's no change from last year's application. It's not entirely a safe to build extra there, and it's on the green belt, and the views from the lodge are fantastic, and it would be detrimental to Southwood and Ferrers and to Battlesbridge, and I fully support the officer's recommendation for a refusal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak before Councillor Pooley? Councillor Shepherd, do you wish to speak?
No, madam, I didn't wish to speak.
Oh, okay. Well, you've done something to do with it. Okay, all right. I've got a couple of H's, but I don't know who they're from. So, Ian, are you speaking?
Chairman, one of the
Councillor Poulter, yeah. Sorry, it's just these H's have come up and there's no person next to them. Right, you have an H, so please carry on.
Yeah, as Councillor Hughes says, this same proposal was refused in April last year. The significance of that is that it hasn't been appealed. So I asked myself why, if the applicant feels so strongly, that didn't happen. I asked what has changed to make this a different application to the one that was refused? And why should we take a different view now to what we took before? And I can't find the answer to that. So I conclude that nothing has changed. This is a greenbelt issue, and that issue has been dealt with extensively by the officer. The previous refusal is a very strong material consideration. I've listened very carefully to what Councillor Clark has had to say, but I don't agree with his conclusions, and I support the recommendation to refuse. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Anyone else before Councillor Pooley? Or are you ready to talk, Councillor Pooley?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that build-up, Janetta, but yeah. I'm glad to have listened to a bit of the debate before speaking, because I arrived at this item with some misgivings about whichever way I was going to decide to vote, because there is no doubt in my mind that we should, as a committee and as a council as a whole, be encouraging appropriate development in and around Chelmsford for appropriate reasons. And the green belt or not green belt, in some respects, is an artificial differentiation that we have to make between things in one part of the rural Chelmsford versus another. There are areas which are much more in need of protection, which are outside the green belt, than those that are in some areas inside the green belt. But for as long as that policy of as long as the green belt exists and our policies accurately and quite rightly reflect that differentiation, we have to take account of all of the considerations that the officers have spelled out. But I did ask myself, in trying to weigh this up in my mind before the debate, if this application had been outside the green belt, what would our considerations have been? Would we still have come to the same conclusion that this was inappropriate development, or might we have been that much more minded to approve it? Because that would have given us a clue as to how much weight we ought to think about attaching to the very special circumstances. I've come to the conclusion that that it is a matter of judgment, but that the extent of this development really is significant. We're taking 8 rooms and increasing them by 22, I think, is the numbers that I was looking at. We have heard conflicting reports about the parking situation, but more particularly for me was the taking away of what is the existing beer garden and play area, family play area, in order to provide additional accommodation. So from being a balanced operation, albeit smaller than the owner would like, it becomes an unbalanced operation, which is much, much more heavily geared towards accommodation and much less geared to the overall experience of people visiting that location. So I do support the officer's recommendation, not necessarily for all the same reasons as the officers have put forward, but I find that this application is not compelling in terms of the use of this existing facility and turning it into what it wants to become. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do know this site and I have visited on a number of occasions. The parking is dreadful during fine weather, and the whole area is very, very popular for families with children, and that play area is extensively used. I have in front of me the National Planning Policy Framework, and looking at proposals affecting the Green Belt, I can only fully support the officer's view and recommendation. There is nothing that I've heard this evening that would get me to vote for this development. It is contrary to our policies and the policies in the latest national guidance. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? I have no more information. In which case, I think we're heading towards the votes.
Chair, I think Councillor Lee has indicated a wish to speak.
Ah, right. I don't know how. Councillor Lee.
Yes, for some reason my H's are appearing, but not my name.
Oh, is that what it is? I thought it was Councillor Wright. That's why I asked him.
I think there's a few of us who've got a similar issue, but anyway, I've got a couple of comments to make. Overall, I think I will have to be voting against this on the highways grounds. It appears
against the officers?
Against this application, so I will be agreeing with the officers.
So, agreeing with the officers, that's what I wanted to be clear. Yeah.
Whereas, with regards to the parking arrangements, it sounds like there are unresolved issues with that. But a couple of other points to make with regards to the officers' reports. There's a few lines in it which I don't think are particularly reasonable. Under 5.2, it states, further, the statement points to a number of already available facilities providing hotel accommodation in the area, adding further doubts that there is a shortfall. The fact that there are or aren't other hotels around does not demonstrate whether there is or isn't a shortfall. Another line in 5.22, it mentions, however, in view of the viability of the business not being threatened. Now, that seems to suggest that if the business were being threatened, this would classify it as an exception to the green belt. So it almost seems like they're possibly being penalised for being a successful business wanting to expand. Again, another point on the green belts. I would argue if it were a full site, or if it were a house, then build it somewhere else. If someone were applying for an extension, then move somewhere else. But with regards to a business such as this, I don't know how a business is expected to expand or grow without them moving premises. Now,
I've lost you for the moment, Councillor Lee. Oh dear. I've lost contact with Councillor Lee. I think we have understood your position, but we cannot complete what you were saying. Is there anyone else who wishes to come in? No? I'm sorry, Councillor Lee, we've lost you somehow. I'll see if there's any. Are you back? No? Right. I think it's fairly clear what Councillor Lee was saying. So therefore, if Councillor Lee can't come back, I'll see if anyone else wishes to speak before I move to. No? I think we've got gremlins in tonight, obviously. Okay, well, I think at this point we can move to the recommendation, which is that the Lodge Country Inn, Hayes Chase, Battlebridge, Wickford application should be refused, as the officers have said, for the reasons on page 9 and page 10. So can I...
Seconded, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Can I have Brian to take a formal vote, please?
Yes, Chair. Beginning with Councillor Ashley, the motion is to refuse the application. So, Councillor Ashley, are you for or against?
Refuse the application.
So you're in favour of I
agree with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just seems to be getting clear.
Councillor Ayres?
I'm for.
Councillor Davidson?
For refusal.
Councillor Dobson?
For refusal.
Councillor Hughes?
For refusal.
Councillor Hyland?
For refusal.
Councillor Lee?
I think we've lost him.
I think we lost Councillor Lee earlier, didn't we?
Yeah.
Councillor Pooley?
Abstain.
Councillor Porter?
Councillor Porter?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Roper? I don't know.
I think that's fairly clear. 4.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Shaw?
For refusal.
Councillor Shepherd?
For refusal.
Yourself, Councillor Sozin?
For refusal.
And Councillor Wright?
For.
So, unless we can go back to Councillor Lee, if he's reappeared.
What about Councillor Clark?
He's not a member of the committee for this one.
Of course, yes.
So, on the basis that Councillor Lee is unable to indicate his vote, that's everybody is in favour of refusing the application apart from one abstention, so the application is refused.
Thank you. We'll move on then to item 12, which is the site at the Mount Meadow Lane, Wickford. Can I have the officer's report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Paul Harwood, Planning Officer. This application is for the demolition of existing outbuildings, construction of a new dwelling and attached cart lodge at the Mount or Meadow Lane in Runwell. The site is located within the Greenbelt. The land attached to the mount is open and spacious and extends backwards to coalesce with the fields beyond. There are several low-level outbuildings to the side and rear of the house. These are known to be used for storage and are haphazard and lightweight in composition. This image shows the mount from along Meadow Lane. This image shows the mount from the land to the rear of the property. The new dwelling will be sited between the mount and Beaumont to the north. The proposed cart lodge would be close to the road. The proposed dwelling will replace the outbuildings located within the rear and side of the garden to the mount. The existing buildings on site are single storey, have a maximum height of 3.7 metres and have flat roofs. They retain a footprint of 272 square metres. New buildings in the Greenbelt are inappropriate development. An exception to this is the redevelopment of previous developed land. This is provided that the new building does not have a greater impact than the existing buildings. The council is satisfied that the outbuildings represent previously developed land. However, the two-storey dwelling and the cart lodge has a floor space of 301 square metres. This represents a 10% increase on the existing. In contrast with the low-level and single-storey existing buildings, that proposed would be a full two-storey dwelling at considerably increased mass scale and height. The dwelling proposed would be noticeably taller at 7.2 metres, and the massing at a two-storey level would be significant. This includes a substantial roof form, a large projecting gable element, and dormer sections. The impact on the Greenbelt would be to create an urban and formal row of dwellings. The new dwelling would increase the mass, scale and height of development across the site. The new dwelling will be much taller than the existing. The new dwelling will be very prominent compared to the existing building. In having greater impact on the openness of the Greenbelt, the proposal is therefore inappropriate development. The projecting gable element located to the side boundary would include a first floor rear window and a large balcony. This balcony would allow views into and across the neighbouring rear garden at Beaumont. This is harmful by way of overlooking. In conclusion, the development would have a great
I've lost you, I think.
impact on the openness of the Greenbelt.
Thank you. You're back.
The development is therefore inappropriate development. Substantial weight should be attached to this harm. There are no very special circumstances that would justify the development. Secondly, the dwelling would overlook the neighbouring garden. This is harmful by overlooking. Officers therefore recommend the refusal of planning permission.
Thank you. Now, who would like to start the conversation on this one? I assume we have no ward member who wishes to speak. Let me just check that. Okay, can we go to anyone who wishes to speak now? Councillor Wright.
Madam Chairman, I've looked at this proposal very carefully and I fully agree with the officer's report. There are absolutely no special circumstances, let alone very special circumstances, that we should go against the national planning guidelines and also our own policies. This application should be refused. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
Yes.
Oh, I heard a voice, but please, I need to...
Sure, I have put an H.
Councillor, sorry. It's not coming up. The H's aren't coming up now. That's the problem.
Oh,
okay.
They are on mine. I can see everybody's H's. All I was going to say was that I agree fully with the officer's recommendation and with Councillor Wright. And I note that the applicant has stated recently that the proposal is not for two-storey, but for a chalet. But the difference in height is still immense from the original heights and what is proposed. And it's much more, it's still very intrusive compared to the neighbours, and I don't see any special circumstances which should allow it to be built either.
Right, thank you, Councillor Shaw. Sorry I missed you. Right, anyone else, please? Councillor Wright, you've got your hand up again.
Yeah, my hand is up, Chairman. Councillor Pooley.
Yeah, well, I'll give way to Councillor Pooley, as I always like to hear what he has to say, and then I'll come back after.
Right, Councillor Pooley.
I'm not open to flattery this evening at all. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm clearly in favour of the officer's recommendation here for a variety of reasons, but yet again, it's worth my noting to myself, purely personal view, that I can imagine some improvement to this site, some development of this particular part of the site that would be very acceptable in terms of most criteria that I personally would adopt. So it always makes me a bit sad to see something that might have some merit flounder because it's not appropriate for a whole variety of reasons. But actually, in this case, I don't see that there are special circumstances that would justify a dwelling house. And what I was expecting to see, there was some local member supporting this. It must have been brought to committee by somebody. And I just wondered what the arguments would have been.
Indeed.
Madam Chairman, can I come on then after Councillor Pooley?
Oh, now, for a second, Ian, I have made one mistake. We do have a gentleman who wishes to speak, and I should have called him earlier. My apologies. Kevin Chitty, of course, I cannot see you because I think you have asked to speak earlier. Are you still there?
I am here indeed. Can you hear me?
My apologies for not calling you sooner.
That's no problem at all.
Can you add to what has been said? And obviously you've heard a lot of this, but we will take this into consideration. So your information, please.
Yeah, I've got a statement to read, but I mean, just on the point about very special circumstances, I mean, our position is not that it's very special circumstances, it's just that this comes within the parameters of acceptability for what's allowable under the MPPF in the Green Belt. But I'll read my statement out, and I think you've perhaps seen it already, but I'll carry on with that. So the applicant wishes members to know that he did go through a pre-application inquiry process, and this is indicated on part 23 of the planning application form. The proposed dwelling would be of a chalet form. I mean, there are two-storey elements to it, or sort of it's a hybrid, but the overall scale is definitely that of a chalet form and not a conventional two-story house. The reason that's been chosen is because it's going to sit between chalet style buildings, and it was thought that they provided the most appropriate reference point for the new dwelling that would sit between them. The siting of this is the important point really for the Greenbelt, is that this business about grouping, which I've raised, that the idea is to bring this building in with the other principal buildings of the area, i.e. the two chalets either side, and get rid of the ugly scattered buildings, the sort of rural litter, if you like, and pull things together, because it's a concept in planning that's well established. That's the best way forward in rural areas and greenbelts. If you want to prevent erosion of the rural quality of these areas. So that's the thinking behind that. On the size of the building, we do contest the officer's report that says it would be a 10% increase, albeit that is small anyway, but we think it's nearer to perhaps a 1% increase. I think that 10% figure is incorrect, but there's not time for me to explain exactly why here, but we think we've got accurate figures for it that show that. The proposed chalet would be higher than the buildings being replaced. That's obvious, so there's no attempt to disguise that. But again, that's because it's appropriate to the context of the grouping and containment that would be provided by the chalet dwellings either side. And in that particular setting, we feel that the degree of impact that additional height would have on greenbelt openness would be insignificant, and certainly would be outweighed by the benefits that would be brought by getting rid of the horrible buildings that are kind of scattered out on the site, on the wider site. Rear balcony, well, I think that's a resolvable issue, and therefore there's nothing more to be said on it here. It's just not a big deal. It can be got over. And then finally, a favourite saying of mine in planning is that guidelines are not policy or guidelines are not tram lines. And there is always some latitude for taking a more accommodating approach. And where this would be appropriate, because there are particular site circumstances and the planning merits of the actual development proposed would suggest it's the right way forward, and there could be a positive planning outcome, all of these things of which we believe apply here, then this would be the natural way to go. And if members would like to do a site visit to have a closer look at the place, then they're very welcome to do so. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't call you earlier. Councillor Wright.
That's okay, no problem at all.
Sorry. Councillor Wright.
Yes, just to follow on from Councillor Pooley, and I too am concerned that this was called to the committee by a ward member, and they have not had the courtesy to attend and explain their reasons for calling it. And there should be sound planning reasons to do so, and all members are expected to come and explain why they have brought it to committee, and I will take this matter up further. Thank you.
Thank you. Now then, as I said, I didn't call Kevin Shitty early enough.
Put your hand up
Anyone
somewhere.
who would like to change what they wish to say, or add to what has already been said? Councillor Mullane, you are here.
Your name's there.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've been through the whole thing. I do support this. I know they've said that I should have said something, but when I spoke to the applicant, he said that he had someone speaking. That's why I haven't spoken. But I do feel that this is a good planning application, and I do support it. So thank you.
Thank you. At least we have an answer there. Anyone else wish to speak?
Yeah, my hand has gone up again, Chairman. Sorry, Chair.
These H's disappear on a regular basis. Carry on.
Yes, I wanted to ask a question of officers, please, in the light of what Mr. Chitty had said.
Yeah.
He said that he was not putting forward the application on the grounds that there were indeed special circumstances or very special circumstances, but simply that it was a qualifying exception in the context of our Greenbelt policy, because it is accepted that it is previously developed land. So can I just ask for clarification for our future reference as much as anything else? Are the officers saying that an application like this must both be on previously developed land and have very special circumstances associated with it? Or is the special circumstances test less if it is previously developed land? Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have the officer reply to that, please, Paul? You need to turn on your microphone.
Sorry, I do turn it off, but I don't know what happens. Yeah, so in regard to what Mr. Chitty said about appropriate development, paragraph 145 sets out development that shouldn't be considered inappropriate. So bullet point G is for previously developed land. So in that case, if it's not inappropriate or it's appropriate development, the very special circumstances test doesn't apply. The test here is that it's whether or not the new building has a greater impact than the existing. And if we're happy that the building is previously developed land, which we are in this case, it meets the definition of that. We're left to consider whether or not there's a greater impact. Floor space has been mentioned, but the main issue, as you know from the report, is that it's a bigger, taller building than the existing, and it's going to create a row of dwellings, and therefore the impact is greater. So it doesn't comply. It is previously developed land, but it doesn't comply and creates greater impact. Therefore, it can't be an appropriate development. Hopefully that makes sense. Then we should consider if there's very special circumstances which there aren't. But yeah, to qualify your point, Councillor, if there was no greater impact and it was previously developed land, we wouldn't need to consider very special circumstances.
Thank you. Does that satisfy you, Councillor?
Yes, I mean, yeah, it's all a bit of a close run thing, but yes, thank you.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? I see no new H's, so hopefully everyone has spoken as they wish. So I think we can go to the recommendation for item 12, the mounts, that it should be refused for the information and on page 8 and page 9. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Can we go to a vote?
Seconded, Madam Chairman.
Yes, Chair. The motion is to refuse the application, so we'll take the vote again as in the past. Beginning with Councillor Ashley.
Refuse.
Councillor Ayres.
For refusal.
Councillor Davidson.
For refusal.
Councillor Dobson.
For refusal.
Councillor Hughes. Councillor Hughes.
Sorry, for refusal.
Councillor Hyland.
For application to be refused.
Councillor Lee.
For refusal.
Councillor Pooley.
For refusal.
Councillor Porter.
For.
Councillor Roper.
Against.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shaw.
For refusal.
Councillor Shepherd.
For refusal.
Yourself, Councillor Sozin.
For refusal.
And Councillor Wright.
For.
Chair, the clear majority, everybody except for one person, is in favour of refusing the application for the reasons set out in the report. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Now the final item on here tonight is the planning appeals, which I'm quite happy for you to look at in your own time. So thank you, everybody. I believe that is everything for tonight. So I will close the meeting. Thank you very much.